How's this going? And let me hit the record. Okay, we're at 6:31. We got people here in the house. We'll get underway. So I want to welcome everybody. Here we are in August. Thank you for taking time out of your summer. This is our August meeting for the Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. I'm the chair this year, John Davey, Vice Chair Tim White. I promoted you last month.
You did.
Secretary, always have goals. Secretary Bob Williams. John Rasler, Vice Chair, is online, and our other Vice Chair, Brooke Washburn, is online. So thank everyone for being here. And I don't know about you, how many people were here last night? See? Oh, this is our third night in a row here. So, but thank you for doing this and being here. It's important, the community provides feedback and you're hearing what's going on so you can, give your thoughts and your concerns. So as we get underway, the first thing we do is we call the meeting to order. If there are no objections to adopting the agenda?
No.
Okay. So the very first thing we do every evening is we have an opportunity for public comment for items that are not on our agenda. So if you have something you want to talk to us about that's not on our agenda tonight, you can do that now. If you have something that you want to talk about, something that's on the agenda, when we talk about it, that's your time to talk about that. But we have, let's see, I'm going to borrow yours. We have these little microphones on the tables. When your button is pushed, it goes green, you're live. So are there any public comments in the room tonight? Wow, I'll fall asleep. So then I guess I'll turn it over to our Zoom attendees. Are there any public comments for items that are not on our agenda tonight? Okay. I do not see that. Good deal. So moving forward, on our agenda, item 4 is we have Supervisor's Communications. Supervisor Heidel, District 1 is here tonight. Supervisor Turnbull has an event tonight, so he cannot be here. But John, if you have your microphone, you ready to go?
I've also been here. This is my third evening in a row. I'm going to pass. The Board of Supervisors has not met in the last 2 weeks, so you're not missing a whole lot. So I'll give you back your time. Thank you.
We might get home early tonight. So that means there's no questions for Supervisor Heidel. So then we're moving right along. So check this off. We don't have a guest speaker tonight. We're going to move on to the projects that we've been looking at. The first one we're looking at tonight is the Town and Country Village, El Dorado, which we were here last night for the scoping meeting. And is Josh in the room?
He was.
Okay, well, you know what I'll do? We'll just, let me share this real quick. I don't know if he has anything he wants to present tonight, but we'll talk about it until he gets back in the room. Or we can talk about Josh.
Well, I think the one thing to know is that it was a very well attended meeting. It was standing room only here last night, over 100 participants. The CEQA consultant that was hired by the planning department presented the CEQA process to everyone, so they had an understanding of what the process is, made it clear that CEQA deals with environment. It doesn't deal with property values. It doesn't deal with, I might lose my view. It's really about the environmental, and there's specific things that a CEQA draft environmental impact report and a final impact report has to have in it. So that's what the first part of the meeting. Then everyone had a chance to walk around a room and talk to Josh or the other project people in the development team, look at the plans, and then there was a Q&A period as well. So I think I filled my 1 minute, and Josh is ready to go. So,
You want to keep talking about it real quick, Kyle?
no, I've said enough.
Well, thank you.
You gonna make it?
I just sent John that's a rendering. Well, thank you all. We really appreciate this opportunity. I think this is about our seventh. Is it seventh?
Well, now we're counting.
No, we appreciate the opportunity. Josh Pane, the applicant for this beautiful proposal, Mr. Mahana and his family's vision. The Mahana family, as I've said before, just to recap for those who may not know, have worked and lived in these hills all the way almost 44 years ago. Some of the families still have homes in the hills here. And the two girls who are running a part of the whole company, the hospitality and some of the development, are now in their 30s, and they went to Camarado School. You know, I was telling my partner, Tyler, today that so often we get lost in all the details of what we're doing. And this has taken us, we're on our 7th year, and the Mahana family is on their 44th year. He started dreaming about these types of things 35 years ago. And if you could just indulge me just a few minutes, I'll just recap where we've been. The county asked folks to put together a pre-application. So we've gone through the whole county pre-application. And that process lasted about almost 2.5 years. We came to APAC, we got some great information, some great ideas, and we kept improving the program that we're proposing to the Board of Supervisors and to the Planning Commission now. That process then led us to a full application that we have a copy of the notice of preparation from the county. And then we had 2 scoping meetings, which are the meetings to decide and to get information on what environmental aspects need to be studied outside of what the county is proposing. But there's still until August 17th is the end of the scoping period. So it's very important. We've been walking door to door. We've had our information out at Double Shot up near Safeway, just trying to touch base with folks to make sure that they get any comments they have. We've had comments from, where we're proposing the sewer line along Old Bass Lake Road. Linda Campbell said, well, be careful, Josh, because the doe has her fawns right near those oak trees out there, and we don't want anyone to hurt those spring activities of birthing. All the way to folks who want to make sure that we do this in a sensitive environmental way that makes sense about how wildlife migrates. And talking with folks who care about that, because I care about it, having been up in the hills, my granddaughters are in Cameron Park, and I'm there with them all the time. Talking about wildlife going under the freeway. Can we somehow find a pathway through this property and get them over under the freeway? So we've had a lot of different good discussions. The proposal you see before you is one that we worked on, 60 total acres. Better go to the microphone, huh? You guys have seen this. 60 total acres. We had in the pre-application 80 acres. The families who live in the hills, Hoosh and the Asha families, they wanted to wait a little longer. Dina up here and her husband wanted to keep talking about that piece. So we're still working on that. But this is 60 acres. And the project is this piece and this piece. And then the program study area is this piece. The Mahana family wanted to just do this and this, build 2 hotels, a reception facility, a beautiful museum, and cottages for the hotels and cottages for the staff of the resort. And the attorneys, the environmental consultants, everyone said, you can't leave that bare. Oh, so why not? That's all the family wants to do. No, well, under state law, CEQA says that if you do things in a stepped fashion, they can do something bad to you. I never could get quite exactly what it was, but they said you have to at least propose something there, what might go there. So we started envisioning during the process, and we felt like, well, what's a product of housing that isn't here? And we started looking at $500,000 and $600,000 townhomes. And we thought that's an affordable product. That's a product that a lot of young people who are moving out of the area, children of people here, could afford. And do it in a village fashion along this old wagon trail. So that is something that we said, let's look at that. Let's look at along this old wagon trail. Mr. Mahana for 40 years has had a vision of looking at that old wagon trail and looking at that as a something that looks like a modern Placerville. A main street, shops, salons, art studios, to just places to be publicly with coffee and a variety of things that a neighborhood may want. And then we started thinking in the bigger picture of how valuable those assets would be for Cameron Park and for Serrano and the whole hills. So we put numbers of things on that. 200 apartment units above these shops along that main street, the old wagon trail, that the Pony Express came in here somewhere, perhaps here, and then came down and came around, perhaps over this old trail. Our archaeologist who's hired to look at all these things is still looking at all that. So that's the overall program, 150-room hotel on each side of the Oak Grove, nestled in. We've gotten it to about a 6.5, 8-foot cut to get in without disturbing those 8 beautiful oaks. And then that becomes the crown jewel of this. Overall, that's the program. There's retail shops, there's senior housing we've envisioned there. And that's the overall program. The project right now that will be considered will be this as it looks and that. And that's our vision. We designed this after the Awani Hotel, my favorite place, and my favorite architecture by an architect by the name of Underwood. How many minutes do I have? Oh, yeah. And so we think that the rocks, the local rocks, if you ever see anything happening, the park and ride lot that's being developed now by the transit district on the corner there, there's a lot of rocks in there. We said, let's use the rocks. Let's use the timber that's coming out of the forest, and let's do this. And designed it in that very, very beautiful way without, obviously, the granite cliffs. This, again, I don't know if I could use your.
Oh, you want a microphone?
Yeah, just so they can hear me. This again, so this is our project development area, these acres, about half of it. And then this is our program study area. Under CEQA, as I said, we have to study something, the potential of what could go there, but we'll have to bring if this were to be approved, we'd have to bring that piece back and say to the planning department, here's what we're thinking. They would look at it, they'd say how close we came in the environmental document. Do we need any other environmental entitlements for that? So that's a ways out. But this piece is in what they call a PD, and that's a planned development. So every detail, every stone, every paint, all the different things, we detail all the way up to the Planning Commission, then the Board of Supervisors. And then if we're fortunate enough and there's enough of support for it, then the Planning Commission considers it, and then it goes to the Board of Supervisors for a rezone, for a general plan amendment, which means that this section right now is in the rural zone. This section is in the community zone. So we would put this in the community zone as well. I first proposed that we could do this within the rural zone, and planning staff didn't like that idea. I told them, well, let's have the body who makes those decisions make that decision. And they said, no, we really think you should put this in the community zone. It really belongs in the community zone because it's right next to the freeway, 80,000 cars going by. And if you're going to have density anywhere, this is where, by good planning practices, you would have density. So I think, did you have?
Did you want me to go forward?
Yeah, if you could, thank you. So there's the overview. You can go forward from that. This is, again, specifically what we're proposing in the project development area. That's the project we're looking at right now. When we look at this, that's the 112 cottage units. We have a conditional use permit for half of them, so we could use them as hotel rooms. We have an idea that the Dorado Country Club has units that they sell as condo units, and people buy them. Jean Wyckoff, who lives up in the property up above, she'd like to, have one and then move to Idaho during the summer and then come back here in the winter. So that's the type of unit we're talking about there. The commercial is the hotel units, and that's the total square footage. So that's 5 floors of hotel. And down below, we have small retail shops. Mr. Mahana is a believer in small because we can get the double shot coffee. We can get Joe's Coffee. We can get those types of smaller operators that really make what's going on. The Apple Hill vendors, the wineries. We've been working with 72 wineries in the county, and we have a vision of welcoming them in. The open space is 4.4 acres. We've designed that around the oaks that exist. We're proposing to spend about $13,000 on oak mitigation, but we're not touching any one of the major oaks, some smaller oaks, but we wind the roads through them. The major circulation takes up 3 acres. That's the project. This is the program study area, as I said. The multifamily here is, our idea is 352 townhomes. We haven't designed it. We're looking at various builders. We're thinking that smaller builders with 5, 7, 9 lots apiece will get the maximum for us. That will be the most creative, beautiful townhomes that people could buy. And I can't even say I'm saying affordable at $500,000 and $550,000, $600,000 a piece. The commercial area is that area underneath the 200 apartments that we're proposing. They're in here somewhere, down here, and the 150 senior units. We think that senior units have a big demand, but we wanted a mixed community, a community with children, a community with seniors, a community with retirees, a community that could be all around this village center, starting with this resort. And then open space down here. And that kind of sums up the whole of the project. What else do I have on there? Do I have? Yeah, you've seen that already. That's a rendering of the landscape. Yeah, and that's the bikeways. I'm a bicyclist. I'm on my bike every day. There's an existing Class 1 bike path coming down to here in this intersection. Very dangerous. I've been up here riding on this road. When people start going that 50 miles an hour, you don't want to be there. No family is going to take their children, 2 or 3, trying to get out there. We're proposing, in the original plan, the bikeway was to come across this property and come up here and go up here. We decided that let's do that. Let's take this chunk of that bike trail out, move it up here. We want the bicyclists to come into this resort and use this resort. And we want to be the connectivity from Cameron Park to El Dorado Hills. And then we saw that once they had taken this property, the Mahanas gave a big chunk of their land to widen this road so people could have wider road. And once that was done in 2019, what took place was it sunk down 22 feet. So the old wagon trail that used to come across here and go down into the creek to the 1,000 acres that Serrano has as public-private open space, kind of got cut off. So we proposed a bicycle, equestrian, pedestrian, electric conveyance vehicle type things, golf carts, all of those things that people are using in Cameron Park and using in a lot of areas, and to go across here and come down this way. We put it in the program study area because we weren't quite sure about it, but I still think we should be studying it extensively now and see if we can get that done in the first piece. It's going to be dependent on state, local funding, and federal funding. So that's the overall, the class 2 bike trails here that are on the road, very dangerous. I've been on it many times, but very tough. And then it goes over to the old Lincoln Highway, which we definitely want to keep preserving. So that's the bikeways and the trails you can see if you want to look at it. I think I'm going into my 11 minutes. Yeah. Another view of the West Hotel. We designed, as I said, the octagon that you see in the Iwani and the chevron style on both sides. And then we have another view in here, but I don't think it's here, but that's open. This is the water program. The 2 water tanks are here. This exists, and we'd have to bring this in. And you'll see a note down here. There are property owners down here that are without water now. Every summer, many of them go dry on their wells. So they've been talking to EID if they could bring a water pipe down. So we would contribute to that. And then finally, the wastewater. We have a wastewater program, private on-site. I think that's the next one. Yeah, private on-site we've designed in the program study area. If we do it on-site, and then we have a public system that we found the best possible gravity flow route down there. This was the route that was contemplated in the 1995 plan, but when this road went down 22 feet, it allowed gravity to flow it here, and then all the way down through there. Rebuild the old wagon trail bridge right there that's been washed out many, many years ago. Yeah, so, and then that's kind of the extent of it on the wastewater. This is, we spent a lot of time, Mr. Mahana is the designer, an architect, a builder, a civil engineer. I only spent about 10 hours on this one day straight with him, and then I got tired and left. But with our architect, designed this between the museum here, the reception floor here, 300-seat reception floor, the restaurant on this side and the restaurant on the other side, and this is the hotel, and this is his design, beautiful, using the local rocks, and then the beauty of the hotel. So that's, I hope I made it within a few minutes. I brought some boards that we've had from Clarksville that we've been very fortunate to have a great working relationship with Betty January and a variety of folks at the Clarksville Historic Society because of our need and want to continue to preserve the Lincoln Highway. Yeah, I brought 2 exhibits from the plan from 1995, the open space exhibit from 1995 and the circulation exhibit. You can see this little dotted line, that's the bicycle path. And I think these are show the rich nature of what's going on in, if you were to paint all of that green, that's the piece of the open space that's supposed to be preserved so you can walk down these little, mostly drainage areas. There's one creek of any size, Carson Creek, Screech Owl Creek is called down here, but yeah. So it gives you, that's the overall specific plan. That's all the area you see as you see Bass Lake Hills. So be glad to answer any questions. I
Yeah,
tried to get
so-
it in.
I'll ask, Amber, Bob, you're here, right here. You have any questions you want to ask Josh right now, or, we're going to borrow
Oh,
this?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I got-
One thing you said that, and maybe I misheard you, the cottages, the roughly 55 cottages that are going to be for the hotel to rent, but you mentioned something about they might be for sale?
Yeah, we're setting it in motion that those could be sold so that we found people like Jean Wyckoff. She just wants a little cottage, a 560-foot cottage to come home to. She doesn't really want to leave the hills. She wants to go back with her grandkids, but when it gets snowy back there, she wants to come back.
So would the plan then be that they might be available for the hotels when an owner is gone,
Absolutely.
that they would be rental, really could leave it?
That's the Silverado.
That's a new thing. Is that the first time you've mentioned
Country
it?
Club. That's what they do at
Approach.
Silverado Country Club.
But that's a
Yeah.
new concept. You haven't brought that up before.
Well, I've mentioned it before in passing, but we're still developing it. In the tentative map, we'll be showing more of that. We have it in two big blocks, two villages right now, I think, or 3 blocks in the tentative map. And when we move toward the final map, then we'd start deciding some of those issues. Because we think there are a lot of folks in 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes that are just wanting, and we're looking at those square footages too, wanting smaller space. Those senior units I named, those are usually about 500 feet apiece, and in a complete complex. So we're trying to innovate and say, okay, how could we do something and have the hotel service all of this to keep that level at this high, very high level for the people who come home? Yeah, but we have found a huge need for, and others will tell you, for 1,200 square foot homes as well, because people want to move out of the $4,000 foot homes.
So John Raslier, your hand's up. Did you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I would
Okay.
like to see on the map exactly where these cottages would be located.
Let me try to grab that. I'll put it back on the screen here. Hold on. Let's see. Oops. Oh, it kicked me out. Give me just a second. Hiding stuff.
Yeah, the cottages are in 2 villages up
You want to do it on that?
above, I think it's,
You want to do that?
yeah, let's do the map, the one.
We'll have to describe it because when it's a screen share, they don't really see where you're.
Oh, they don't see it?
No, do you want to do it like that?
Or can they see it in the room?
Well,
Yeah, put that up, if you would, put it up on the board and then I'll, where's the camera at here?
camera's back there, so it's pointed at me, so.
Yeah, so John, the cottages on the site plan, we have 2 villages. The main entry is right in the center, off the center of the big oak on the hill. And then you arrive down in, and one way is into the hotel, 56 cottage units over there. And then you come in this gate, there'll be 2 gates here, and this gate, and you'll come into the resort staff cottages on this village side. And then this is all the open space with the drainage that we're hoping, if U.S. Fish and Game will allow us, we'll keep water running in there to circulate water off the streets. And then we have a pathway all along here and hopefully to connect on to more off-road pathways. We've heard that's important.
Would
So,
these,
John,
I had a question, would these cottages be close to the school? Is that where you were intending to put them?
Well, the school is way down on the other end. So the school is another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels to the east.
Yeah, so John, if I can describe it, and for the people online who are seeing it on the screen share right now, at the top of this map, Country Club runs across the top of it. The block area at the very top is where the cottages are proposed, and they run up to Bass Lake Road on the west, and they go just past where that roundabout is in the middle of the plan area, not the study area. And so, yeah, it would go to the east a little bit, but not quite all the way up towards Holy Trinity.
Yeah, there's, Morehouse has 20 acres, Gene Wyckoff has 10, yeah, Conte, the Contes have 10, and then Lennar, Tomwin, and George and everyone, they have, I think, the detention basin there, and then a potential park site.
And that's, I think, being filled, there's soil on that. That's a playing field. I think it's for Holy Trinity or some.
Yeah, well,
use of reach.
the developer
It has.
above Holy Trinity had donated a piece of land directly across from the school for some kind of a ball field, or
Yeah.
it's a recreation field.
George is here.
Yeah.
George is here.
We won't put them on the spot, but George, they did donate that land like you're describing it, John. And there's dirt going in on it right now that's being getting ready for some grading eventually, I'm assuming. And there's been some talk in the community because some folks that are new to the community didn't know what that was. They thought it was a CSD Park site. The CSD Park is actually on the south side of Country Club, and it's above the freeway. This is sort of north of that, and it's right along, we'll keep changing the name of the road, Morrison Road, Tierra de Dios, where it goes along the west side of Holy Trinity. Did I describe it?
I was there when the developer had made the
Yeah.
agreement with Holy Trinity to build this, to donate this piece of land, either as, as some kind of a field for, it could be for anything. But all right, the other thing I wanted to ask, I'm a bike rider too, and the only way I could ever use any of these bike trails would be to take a car over to you and then park somewhere. So I want to ask, are you going to do anything about putting a Class 1 bike trail along Bass Lake Road? Because that's
You want me to jump in real
probably
quick?
the only way that people can come in and actually use any of your bike trails if they're coming down from up where Serrano is, Serrano Parkway, and come down and then, jump onto your bike and pedestrian trails. Otherwise, they're really not accessible.
Hey, John, real quick. So the Bass Lake North, the current project that Norm Brown's has Toll Brothers on, north of this, up behind the Safeway, they're conditioned to provide that bicycle trail, Class 1, down all the way down to this project site, I believe, to Country Club. Well, actually, to the highway was the original COA on that. So they're building that, but it's a trigger on when they hit a certain number of housing permits.
Well, I kind of feel that if you have all these other trails within the property, you should make sure that people can get to them. And that would be to have a Class 1 bike trail coming all the way down, probably at least from Serrano Parkway down to, the old Country Club Road.
It's kind of Class 1 right now in front of Sienna Ridge, the shopping center there, that wide sidewalk, the bike trail that's there that was provided, I want to say, by Laurel Oaks in 2005. When they realigned Bass Lake Road, there is a Class 1 there from about the supermarket down to Hollow Oak. And then, so Norm Brown is conditioned with the Toll Brothers project to provide another big section of Class 1. And then across, of course, they're building or they're grading right now for the park and ride with El Dorado Transit. And the park and ride is not just for the commuter service, it's also for carpool, and it's for access to the trails that are supposed to be in the Bass Lake Hills. So there'll be a small parking there, 100 vehicles. So, but again,
Expandable to 200.
yeah, well, it's supposed to be 200, but 100 is what we're at now. But I believe that, John, you're talking about the connectivity all the way to the north, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah. So eventually, but it's multiple players. So the timing is still.
But I think the DOT has told me that they're getting close to building it out.
Okay.
Yeah. And John, you had talked to me way back about the connectivity east-west as well. That's why we started thinking about this bridge and the connectivity up to the 1,000 acres and the 20 trails up in the Serrano territories. So, and all the beautiful area that they have up there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
class one that's along the east side of Bass Lake Road, eventually, when it's built with the Toll Brother project, it'll connect right there by Country Club.
Yeah,
So,
but you
yeah,
see, John, a class one should be on the road itself and it should be on both sides. Okay, it
Well-
shouldn't be as it is now on the east side of Bass Lake Road because you have to cross over. People don't do that. People want to stay on the road itself and not have to cross over, which is what you're doing now, that class one that they have now. I've never been on it. Doesn't look like it's much of anything, to be honest with you. So I
yeah,
would just
yeah.
ask that they consider a class one on Bass Lake Road itself and on both sides. Especially if you want people to use the internal bike and pedestrian paths that you have in your property. So,
we'll
okay,
make sure-
that's
we'll-
all I
Thank you.
wanted to say.
Okay, well, for sure, John, I know that when it comes time for the comments for the draft EIR, that I'm pointing you to this subcommittee, so you'll be writing that part for us.
Okay, I most certainly will.
See, you were drafted, thank you.
Okay, okay.
So, at this point, I think, I don't see other, I'll open up for the room. Sorry, we talk a lot. Apologize, guys. If there's any comments in the room, there are microphones on the table. I'm probably yours to point. You push the button, it turns green, please talk. So, hands up first. You just turn on, turns green, said, yeah.
This is my first visit here. I've lived here since 1993, so I'm one of those gray-haired people that
Yeah.
have been here a long time. I'm old. So what you built, my understanding, is a new town.
Could that person speak a little louder?
Oh, you better hold it. There you go.
So what you've built is a new town. This is the town, new town, completely new town. Because with the town comes residences and stuff. And so with this town, from what I understand, you have infrastructure that's in place or going to be needed. You have roads that are going to have to be built. You have new parks that are going to be built. You have those facilities and that infrastructure, sewer that has to be built. And all that requires money. Well, in the past, since 1993, our supervisors or whoever in their infinite wisdom, when they were doing this is, well, let's float bonds for this and you guys will never have to pay for it. Well, I know for a fact there's been hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds that have been floated that for the new residences that have been built and for the new towns that have been built and all the infrastructure necessary for that. And guess who's paying for that? It's old folks, this gray-haired stuff here. So we're getting hit with all of this. So it would be great if you designed this thing some way for the people that are creating this program and for the new residences, the new citizens of this area that's going to be buying all this new property, let them pay for it.
And that's exactly what we're doing. If you look at the county's program, one piece is a finance facilities plan, public facilities plan. And the Bass Lake Hills has a facilities plan that others, all those new homes are paying into. And so we will have to amend that plan just for this area and decide how to pay for that 10,000 linear foot sewer line and how to pay for the water line. Yep. And we'll have to finance that on what we're proposing. Now, if anyone else, these will be public lines, so if anyone else wants to come into those lines, then they'll pay their fair share for their units that they're tapping into. The biggest problem in this whole plan for the last, since 1995 is that no one has financed a water or sewer plan for these properties. And that's what we're proposing to do.
Yeah, that's correct. When I was in meetings in 1994 and such, they said, we're not going to cost, it's not going to cost you people anything to build out Wild Oak Park, that area on that site, to build out all these new residences. And all of a sudden, CSD says, hey, we need to expand the park systems because more people are using them. I wonder why more people are using them. It's because there's more people there. So they said, we're going to float $70 million in bonds or $150 million in bonds to expand out the facilities. Or we're going to buy some new bonds. Or we're going to buy some new land. And when they do that, then somebody's got to pay the revenue that's created from that. It comes from somebody's pocket, and it's called property taxes and such. And so we're hit with that, but the promises were made in public that we would never have to pay for those bonds, the people that are sitting in this room right now. What promises are you giving?
Well, I can only promise you this, that what I put in writing, I will back up. And what I have to put in writing is a complete financing plan of how to build these facilities. And the county will have to review it. They're reviewing our $45,000 study to determine what we have to build and how much it'll cost. And if there's any cost to the county, that's a PFFP, Public Financing Facilities Plan. So I can guarantee you that. Now, if the Community Service District, they've already given us a letter and said, okay, under the Mellow Roofs law, you will be obligated for so much money or park space within these homes that you may build at some point. I don't know if hotel units are included. I can't remember. But so all I'm saying is I can stand here in good conscience and say that's what we'll do. Because ultimately, I'll have to abide by that when it gets to the Board of Supervisors. And I'll have to abide by that plan like everybody else does. Now, if CSD decides, their board decides, hey, we've decided we want a regional park site, and the voters, we all voting, get to decide, well, that's a whole nother story. And I know they're looking for a regional park site, whether they'll take pieces from what budget or how they'll put that together. But that may come to the voters and they may have to make a decision on that. But that's what I can say.
So, and I'll chime in real quick. So the PFFP for the Bass Lake Hill specific plan, it's all of the projects along Hawkview, along Bass Lake Road. We talked about the Toll Brothers project, Hidden Ridge, the two projects up by Holy Trinity and the one in Cameron Park. There is a Melrose for that. And so those fees are going for the infrastructure to front load. So we just realigned Bass Lake Road, realigned Country Club, all the water, the sewer for those new projects. There's other public utilities involved. And then
Traffic light on the freeway.
that was
on the freeway. I
partial
think,
on it,
George,
yeah.
you guys paid for all of that with all of those. To
So-
put Country Club, to put the new Country Club in.
Yeah,
Mahana's
so-
property was involved, the
all those
Asha
projects,
families.
the front loaded, the developer provided the money up front. It's a CFD that's paying the developer back. So when you own a home in those areas, when you pay your Melrose, that's what it's funding is that. And it's a 30-year or 40? 30, so it's a 30-year Melrose. So if you buy a house over there, you're in for the long haul.
But if you're in, on Hollow Oak somewhere, George, he's not gonna pay for that, right? He isn't using any of that. Yeah, the supervisor was saying.
Well, I know we are. I tell people all the time, I don't care what you put on the land. You can put hog farms and stuff like that, as long as it doesn't cost me any money or my quality of life. Because that is my right. My right as a resident is quality of life that I was used to when I moved up here, promise. And I'm not going to pay any additional money for somebody to make a profit on some property that they own because I didn't make any money on this. I like the idea, the structure and stuff. It's a new town, great. But I don't want to pay for anything. And then first thing out of my mind is I know for a fact because I have a master's degree and part of it was in the economics or in the environment, and it's a study on water use. It's called water use economics. And I know for a fact, after studying this, that eventually, the next drought we have, will come, that you're gonna run out of water. And there's gonna be a reduction in water. And every time there's a reduction in water, the CSD and the EID all come around and go, okay, we're gonna reduce the usage. We're gonna require you to reduce your usage of water. And to make up for the lost revenue, they increase the rate. So when new residents come in and they build, that's great. But when this loss of use and it creates an additional revenue structure, it comes out of my pocket because there was new people moved in. So I'm just saying, yeah, I'm great.
So on that idea, I'd like to ask EID to come and have a discussion with us so we can hear from them how they plan new projects coming in and how they plan for capacity. I predict those short years, which we seem to have too many of.
$120 million bond floated to raise the
Yes.
Folsom Dam. Well, great. When the state of California says, hey, we need that water, and they force you to reduce it, and these guys out here that are running out of water, and the state says, we're going to meter your wells. We want that water. And you're screaming and go, wait, you can't do that. Yes, they can. They own all the water. So that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, so there's a lot of them.
I don't care what you do with it. Just, I don't want to-
But to your point,
My
let's have
commitment-
EID come and talk to us about it. We'll ask for them to come and discuss.
But I'd like to sit down with you and go over the facilities plan that exists now. And then, once our consultant does a facilities finance plan for our project, then look at it and say, this is how it's going to be financed. There'll be a variety of ways we can do it. You can do it with cash. You can do it with bonds. You can do it in a variety of ways. But I'd like to sit down and look at those, and you can see, okay, this is what's been happening now, and then this is what we're proposing. Because eventually, the planning commission, the board are going to have to look at those documents. But I'd like to sit down and look at it with you, and I'll do it. Yes.
Thank you for your questions. Can you get a microphone over so our online people can hear you? Thanks. Good question.
Just have a question. How do impact fees work? Are they part of a Mello-Roos or are they separate from a Mello-Roos? And I know the school districts charge them, EID charges impact, CSD charges impact. Who else charges impact fees? And don't they pay for a lot of these upfront costs?
Yes. So some of that pays for it. The parks piece, we have the Parks Community Service District here. Some of those, the Mello-Roos fees, if it's a bond, those pay upfront. So it just depends on the financing mechanism. But yeah, those impact fees, we're going to evaluate, and our consultant will evaluate, the county's evaluating our consultant's proposal now. And then there'll be a whole study on that and where those will be paid from. But each agency's impact fees are different. The water
Aren't they
agency.
intended to replace some of the bond requirements? The bonding money?
That's already out there.
No, that's going to be asked for if they need bonds to finish projects. Don't the impact fees
The bonds are
affect?
typically from a Mello-Roos or a CFD, and they're for the infrastructure. The impact fees that we do for projects are what the developer is contributing. Are they finance? I don't want, sorry, Karen.
I
put you
thought
on
they
the
were
spot.
paid by the
They're
homeowner.
paid by, when you
Yeah.
get your permit to build a home.
Yeah, yeah,
Cost of the home.
by the developer, so.
Or the
But the
homeowner.
developer does
Or the
charge you when you buy the
homeowner, yeah.
home. Trust me, you're paying for it. So, but yeah, you're right. But the bonds are a Mello-Roos, which are which is, an entitlement on, it's a condition against the home that you as a property owner, you're paying into it.
Is a Mello-Roos the same as an impact fee?
No,
No.
They're separate.
yes.
Actually, what we've done, I was just mentioning that by getting EID down here, it may be time for us to do a quick seminar, half-hour presentation on Mello-Roos, impact fees, and how all these things come together, and how the developer gets them, or they're imposed by various agencies, but people have a fuller understanding of what the process is.
Thank you for your question. So is anybody else in the room? You got a microphone? You're green? Golden. You will be. Just push it once and it should stay on. Thanks.
Josh, you mentioned that, that bridge over Bass Lake Road is not going to be a part of the draft EIR this time.
Yeah.
When is it?
Well, we have it slated in the program study area, and I think we probably should study it for these two. It was thought, when we started talking about connectivity, we said, well, let's study it. If we do this, when these units come online, this little village of 200 units here, 350 townhome units, when this village comes online, maybe that'll be enough. But I think between Cameron Park and the hills, there's enough connectivity and enough need right now. So it would be nice to study it right now, if that's where you're going. I think that probably, and we just need a little more, we've done an analysis, an engineering analysis on it. So we'd have to do a little more work. We've done a rendering of it. We might have to do a little more work to get it to an environmental stage. So, you know, if you put that email to the county, they'll see it, and then we might say, well, we should put a little more work into it and see if we can get that bridge. It's going to be an expensive bridge, you know, pedestrian, equestrian, but that old trail needs to continue, I think, and then get down to the old trail as it was proposed in the specific plan. And now it's 22 feet high. You know, that this area along the road where that trail comes, the bike trail, it'd be nice to get it down here and then get it down into the old wagon trail, which is an 1830s trail. A beautiful rock wall, a beautiful place to go hike down. It'd be beautiful. I mean, selfishly for us, and we want to help contribute to it, but it would be beautiful for this resort, for any homeowners here, and any of the children who live in there, to be able to access this 1,000 acres. You know, Colgate Park is 1,017 acres. And there's 1,000 acres of open space here with 20 different trails that the Parker family built, and it's beautiful. So to access it, to bring access over here would be beautiful. So we'd love to see your comment in the on an email to the county, and you know, and we'll look at it. But just you have until the 17th to do that by 5 p.m.
What I have was sort of a two-part thing. This came up when we were discussing and I don't know what a class 1 bicycle route is, but from Safeway area down how far?
Right now, you can see this dotted line is the class 1 bike path. And so this piece is going to be built next. DOT tells us it's going to be within a matter of 6-8 months. That piece on that side will be built. Ironically, the Mahanas gave property to widen Bass Lake Road, but they also gave property when they did it in 2007, there was a little spur that came out here, and no one understood why that spur was going onto the land, and it was the continuation of this trail that was supposed to be there. They engineered the spur, and he gave the land. You can see it on the map. So what is that spur doing going up on the land? It looks like a little hook going up. So, yeah, so our vision would be that this would then be in a class 1, continuing this way, keeping away from all of this area. And then once this, if this interchange ever has to be increased or something happen, more lanes, or there's all ideas, dog bone traffic circles, a whole traffic circle to ease traffic, or a traffic light. Whatever it is, we'll want to try to figure out how to get bicyclists safely in here when we have to.
Safely is the magic word.
Yeah,
On Bass Lake Road, unless it gets widened and straightened, You don't want to be riding a bike
I've been
up
on
and down Bass Lake Road.
So are there any more comments in the room? Do you have a microphone? Awesome.
I have a comment.
Hey, John, can we get the room and I'll come right back to you?
Thank you.
There. Took
Thanks,
me a
John.
minute to get it green, sorry.
You're good.
My name's Linda Campbell. I'm not the Linda Campbell that talked to you about the deer, but I like her idea and concern about the deer. So just a different Linda. I have a few thoughts that I've outlined. One, I want to say I really like the idea of the History Museum. I love that because I think that it's important to preserve the history that we have in this area. I like the idea of the shops, if in fact they are able to be populated with local vendors. I will say with that as a caveat though, if they're located in the hotel, personally as a resident, I may not go there just to go to those shops because I wouldn't want to deal with the hotel stuff, right? So you could change my mind, but I'm
Well,
just.
you should see how we're designing it, but okay.
Okay. One concern is the change of the expansion of the community region to include the rural region and changing that particular area. Only in regards to how it fits into the general purpose and overview of the general plan. The fact that we are a rural county, we want to keep that character and a lot of those natural resources. So I think that it's just important to think, if we change this for this one, how many other ones are we changing rural regions for? And how soon are we going to be out of rural regions in the area?
Let me have some, so the rural region is all of this down below, except it's this piece right here.
Right.
Up to here.
Well, and some of them are rural residences already, right?
Well, there are a lot of rural residents.
Correct.
Down in here. About 95 of Mohanas have their ranch here, and then there are about 8 of them, Mary and Bill and Steve now, and the Rodriguez's on both sides, and then Jan has a place up here, and then Campbell's, Linda Campbell is in the big M there. So yeah, there are rural residences in there. Yeah. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we'd originally proposed this. You can look at our original proposal, and it was we keep it in the rural region. And there are provisions in the rural zone types of facilities if there's infrastructure. Well, we checked with EID, we checked with them on water and sewer, and they said, we can deliver water and sewer to you. Called a facilities improvement letter. And we said, okay. Staff didn't want us to keep that. They said, you know, this project really is more of a community zone. Since we have community zones all up here, we're not telling you what to do, but we believe this is more of a community zone project. And
I just wanted to bring it up, obviously, for APAC and then also Planning Commission to factor that in as community feedback, that's something to just consider, right? Totally appreciate your input on it. The water already came up. Definitely, as soon as it hits a drought, what's going to be done? Is this going to be prioritized? Because we're downstream, so is that going to have impact on other communities east of us, and especially our agricultural community? Hopefully not, but parking and vehicles. So the plan references 577 parking spaces between the hotels and the cottages, in addition to transport vehicles during large events. Eastbound Highway 50 already backs up onto the freeway lane at times now. I've seen that and had to almost swerve, and that's a truck lane, so that doesn't really help right now. So a clear analysis of the impact on Highway 50 as well as Bass Lake Road. Handling that level of traffic is super critical. The total dwelling units for the cottages, the 112 cottages, are part of this proposal. But to your point, you guys did include that program study area, which has an additional 712 units. So when this goes to review, are they going to look at those additional 712 units? Oh, I had 12 from the 712. Either way, that's still a lot. And actually, from the comments just earlier today, the idea of not everybody considers $500,000 to $600,000 for a townhome affordable. So, so it all sounds really good, but is it really serving a larger community? Are people really going to be able to kind of step into some of these things, especially families and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, my daughter just bought, they bought a place in my park, 76,000. That was affordable for them. I know it's a lot of money, and if we could miraculously do this,
If you don't talk into the microphone, we can't hear you.
sorry, if we could somehow miraculously do that, to get it at that price point, we'll be
But
We'll
did
be
they
very
buy a
rich.
house or did they buy a townhome?
duplex.
So they have some property on it at all? Do they have a yard area?
Yeah, a little backyard, little side yard, a little carport. Yeah.
Right.
So all I'm saying is, or Reverend Tom at the Episcopal Church, when I talked to him, he bought in Rancho Cordova, a new pastor up at the Episcopal Church, and he said, I had to buy in Rancho Cordova. There's nothing affordable up here. Then I started talking about hotel staff, and he said, well, Josh, teachers need these units. Teachers starting out need these units. And then he said, Reverend Tom was doing something, he just started naming people from his experience who need these things. So, yeah, I mean, hey, we can't promise you that we could deliver a 550, George, who knows this stuff better than me, a $550,000 townhome. But I'll tell you, we're going to try, because we think that when people have those buying options, and I really believe that there'll be a lot of folks nearing retirement who want to get out of their 3, 4, 5,000 foot, and they want to come down to an 1,800 or there's a beautiful model of a 1,100 square foot, 550 and 550 that is just a gorgeous townhome that I know a lot of seniors, our own planner who lives in Serrano and 4,000 feet. He wants.
I have one
wants
last
of them.
thing. At the end of last month's meeting, there was a gentleman named Alistair. I don't know if he's in
Oh,
here.
yeah.
He's not here.
Yeah.
So he brought up a question of who's looking at this holistically. So today I went through the APAC website. Based on that, there's currently a potential of 3,687 new dwelling units just on what's published. And that includes this project. That's only active projects. That doesn't include what's been approved and is already in progress. So if we think about that, just within the APAC area, not including all of the other things, that goes into a lot of people coming up in the area and schools that are needed. The expansion of schools was brought up last week or last month, and I'm sure again too. So all of those things, infrastructure and community needs, really need to be factored into what we're looking at.
Yeah. And
Please.
to your point about that, did you count Marble Valley when you were
I
counting?
did not count Marble
That's
Valley,
another-
and I know that's there, but it's not on your website.
It is on our website. There's just nothing available anymore because that project, the scoping meeting was in 2012. The project documents, we can't find them anymore. We just have what we were able to get at the time. But that's like between that and Lime Rock, that's like almost 4,000 houses
Right.
on the south side. So to your point, yeah, we always ask the question about schools. The schools never seem to provide anything other than we're okay. So
then-
and we'll ask them, we can have them come back. We've had them here before. They'll give
So
us the
then our
same
Board of
answer.
Supervisors needs to be a little bit more specific maybe about,
The thing about
asking
schools is
details on
that a county does not control anything with the school. It's a state level thing. So,
And the
but you're
Board of
right, we should have a
Supervisors-
dialogue about it.
yeah, I think the Board of Supervisors could potentially help then with the state, if that's needed. Right,
PG&E, the water, they all say that they have they have the ability to provide whatever amount of electricity, water, and gas are needed for these projects. Well, I'm not going to get in that debate. I'm telling you that when they review these documents,
That's what they're saying.
they
So-
say that in the document that they can provide the services that they are supposed to provide, and they see no issue with adding an additional 1,000 homes or whatever it is. Different question is whether they can, but that's what they say.
Yeah, like you had suggested, when the state steps in, it's a little different. So are there any more in the room? Because we have two that are online we probably should get through, and we're taking more time than we told. We told Josh that we're gonna keep them pretty short, and we lied. So there's no more in the room. John, you had your hand up, John Raslier, and then Brooke, you'll be right after John.
My question is, if you go back to the map that you had previously, and I'm looking at the old Bass Lake Road. And if you look down, it looks like it's going to be paved or whatever for only a short distance coming off of, this is the old Bass Lake Road coming down off of Bass Lake, I'm going to call it the new Bass Lake Road. Okay, you'll see it all the way. I'm looking at it all the way on the left of my screen, the
Yes.
old Bass Lake Road. And you'll see it only goes down, looks like maybe 2 miles. This would be, if they continued this road, it would go all the way down to Silver Valley. Okay? And if that were the case, people from outside of Cameron Park could get onto Silver Valley, take this, I'm going to call it the old Bass Lake Road, and come up to this property, either walking or taking a bicycle. So the question I have to ask is anybody thinking about extending this old Bass Lake Road down to Silver Valley? Now, I've been on it on a car, and I almost destroyed my car on this road. It's such a bumpy, hilly, dirty road. So are there any plans to expand or to extend this road?
That's actually a private road. I think we have several of the owners, the Mahana Zone, part of it.
Old Bass Lake Road, yes.
That John's talking about.
Yeah.
Mary and his husband, 40 years have owned part of it. Yeah.
So is there any plan to extend that road down to Silver Valley?
So not Old Bass Lake Road, but in the CIP, I think there's 4 country club extensions in the CIP for a 20-year horizon. And when I add them up, it's about $85 million.
And where is that going to come in, though? Would it go to Silver Valley?
So, you know, right now where they're doing the park and ride at Bass Lake, right there where Old Bass Lake Road comes into Bass Lake Road across from the new country club signal.
Uh-huh.
The long-term plan is for that road to go straight, not the old Bass Lake Road, but the new country club will go straight. And it will follow some future alignment that will come out basically along like by Tong and then out into Silver Valley. And that's basically where the Costco and the EDH 52 project at. It has a connection plan for I think it's Village A14, the newer village that they're building in Serrano. I can't remember the name of that road. They have a future gate there. So the long-term plan is for Country Club to go from Cameron Park, essentially Dorado Hills Boulevard, but Silver Valley for sure.
And I think a concern that the Mahanas have had as an honorary board member of the Old Lincoln Highway Association, I think Mary has had that concern. Jan, everyone, is not to destroy the Old Lincoln Highway, but to save it. And so we'll look to our leadership to find an alternative for that will save that in perpetuity so that we don't have to, because right now the alignment is going on top a big piece of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary has it.
I don't know if I need this.
All right, thank you. Seems a lot of pie in the sky talking about this. And I think all of this really should become part of the plan. Because if you can't get to your property then it's not feasible for pedestrian or bike use. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Yeah, we bought our property in 77 and we built out there in 88. And we were able to hook up with the ID because they were going through our property. And I just told them, look, I know where your water line is. You're going through our property. So we already have the ID. We've been out there. We built our dream house. You know, we love it. 10 acres per one house. Okay. My biggest concern is I love all this, the hotel and the planning, and we're very happy to have Mo and Josh who are out there trying to do the best they can to keep it looking beautiful and keep the historical value. Now, Old Bass Lake Road is the old Lincoln Highway, and it is the longest untouched part of the Lincoln Highway in the United States. And I know every inch of this road, and I love it. And I'm here to protect it, okay? And so I know the thinking is it would be so easy just to follow that road down to Costco, which, by the way, that's another thought. But anyway, so I am trying to, this is a historical road. It's something that we have here in this area that is very unusual, and it goes all the way across the United States. And this book I got at, they have Clarksville Days, you know, once a year. I bought this at that Clarksville Day. That is the other side of Bass Lake Road, where the freeway crosses over and wiped out Lincoln Highway. And there's another piece of it on the other side. Anyway, it's very historical, all of it. And that's why I'm here. I just want to protect that road. And yeah, it's the most natural way to get to Costco. But you would be going right through our property because we have 5 acres on each side of the road. And already the sewer is probably going to go through, I don't know, but you know, we've been out there for a long time, and I'm just wanting to make sure that road hangs in there. There's other ways you can get to Costco.
Oh, there's not.
So we have Brooke here online. We need to wrap this up because we have another guest here tonight. So Brooke, if you're ready, go jump on in.
Hi there. Okay, I just wanted to piggyback on the holistic approach, and I know that this plan has been in place or some iteration of it for over 3 decades, but with that, I would assume that the zoning would allow for some flexibility, and maybe I know the surrounding counties, there's so much sports tourism, and the use here of a hotel lends itself, instead of so many new residential units and taxing our already overtaxed utilities, is there room or flexibility in the zoning as it exists where you could do more recreational activities building off the hotel that would actually be more revenue generating for the county or for this area?
Well, we're all ears.
I bring it up. Yeah, I bring it up because I don't know, it's a big news ticket, and I'm heavily involved because I have son that age. But Roseville, Sacramento, they've invested quite heavily in these in quote unquote sports tourism because it is the only industry that is recession proof. Because it's inevitable kids will play sports, and they look for these destinations where you have such a fantastic hotel that you're putting in. If you were to also have facilities that could host these kind of tournaments, I think they generated over 6 figures in just one weekend with a girls basketball tournament in Roseville. That just seems like something that we seem to be kind of tunnel vision for growth mindset, meaning residential housing, but maybe changing that. And I didn't know if that was something that's even an option within the type of zoning for this property or this development.
Yeah, I think it is. We've been working with Jeff Booker and the mountain bicyclist for off-road trails as well, because they have a huge following in the high school. And Steve Ferry's son runs that program and developed it. And that brings hundreds of bicyclists in. But on that concept, we'd be happy to meet Brooke. The family owns 40 acres on the other side as well that may be adaptable for some type of recreational usage like that as well.
The difficulty we've always had as a challenge in our community is that it's Dorado hills and playing fields are usually flat.
Yeah.
So topography is a big challenge. I mean, the CSD is always challenged with what's presented to them in terms of what's available when a developer. In my own neighborhood, built in the 90s, it's a park, but it's on the only piece of property that you can't build a house on, and it's all granite outcropping. And we had a swimming pool there and a clubhouse. The swimming pool is 4 feet deep, and now it's filled in. So,
yeah. But John, you'd be very surprised because a lot of these sports are actually indoor as well. So it's not necessarily that you have to have this flat piece of land, but you also have the golf courses around here too. But we don't have a hotel, and El Dorado County does not have the ability to host any of these international or just statewide tournaments. But all the surrounding counties do. And it just seems like something that we should get in on.
Well, call me, Brooke, so we can sit down and talk about what the room count is needed for that.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Josh.
Thank you all.
We took way more time than we intended, but thankfully Supervisor Heidel donated some of his time to us tonight, so. So thanks for that. And so we're gonna move along. The next item we have on our agenda tonight, right here from PAC West, Scott Hudson. Scott, where are you in the room? There you are. You're hiding in the corner. If you want to jump up here to this microphone, I'll drive what you have here and you tell me what to do. And I'm going to return your memory stick while we're at it. Let me share on this.
If you'll pull that up, hopefully we'll have a technological success.
Well.
I'm Scott Hodson with PAC Trust, and we own the 100 acres that is roughly bounded by Carson Creek, Latrobe Road, and Golden Foothill at entrance number 3 to the business park. So directly across from Blackstone would be the.
Could you please talk into the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
The
The microphone is strictly for Zoom. That microphone, that big one right in front of you on the stand. The screen? Yeah, just pick it up a little bit. There you go.
Try again, John. Can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to start again. Scott Hodson with PAC Trust. And we own the 100 acres that is at essentially entrance number 3 to the business park. We're bounded by Carson Creek, Latrobe Road, and Golden Foothills, the southern Golden Foothills intersection with Latrobe. So our southeastern corner is directly across from the main entrance to Blackstone. Our southwestern corner is across the street from Heritage, just to give folks a sense of perspective. We've owned this property for maybe 17 or more years. And some of us know us for, I call it the road to nowhere. We have a piece of road that is across from Heritage that we built in the about 2007 to 10 timeframe in connection with planned buildings that we had on that site that were set aside during the Great Recession. We had 2 flexible office buildings that were designed there and decided that it was not the right time to bring those out. But we'd already finished the road, so the road sits there today, and I know a lot of the community makes their way up and down that road to get into the project. And it's a pretty piece of dirt. In that 2007 timeframe, we did all of the mass grading of that site. So the whole 70 usable acres roughly has already been mass graded. At that time, we did all of our wetlands mitigation work and actually set aside about 24 and a half of the 100 acres that we own there into a conservation easement area, and then funded an endowment for the perpetual maintenance of that conservation area. And so the site that I'm going to talk to you about today is at the southern end of this. And John, perhaps you could roll me forward a couple of pictures. We'll get to a site plan.
Oh, okay, right here?
Right there. That's a good one to talk off of. And if we look at the right-hand side of this drawing, there is, at that intersection, that is the southerly intersection of Golden Foothill and Latrobe. Blackstone's main entrance proceeding off the drawing to the right. In the bottom left of this drawing, the white area that's beneath it would be the commercial parcel and Heritage, and then all of Heritage continues beneath this property to the south and to the west. And then everything that's directly to the south of us is the continuation of the El Dorado Hills Business Park. You'll also recognize this site by R.J. Matthews. That's where it intersects with Golden Foothill. And I'm here tonight to present to you one project and sort of give you a glimpse into the next project that would follow that. So the project I'm here to present to you are the two buildings that you see on the left. Those are two industrial office warehouse buildings, kind of your traditional business park building with office in the front and loading in the back. These buildings are 69 and 78,000 square feet respectively, so a total of about 150,000 feet of new space. They'd be parked about 1.5 per thousand. So if that's a little bit less than 150,000 feet of real estate, so in about a little under 300 new parking spaces that would support that space. And so this site is about 10 acres. APAC Trust is a 50-plus-year-old developer of office and industrial parks. We are based in Portland, Oregon, but build in a variety of markets across the country, up and down the West Coast, in Texas, and in Washington, D.C. would sort of be the principal areas in which we've produced product over the years. And this is a pretty common product for us here. These buildings would divide down, the building on the left would divide down to about 15,000 feet would be sort of the smallest tenant that could take that space. And the space to the right probably divides down closer to 20,000 square feet. So the type of customers that take these buildings typically would range from companies that might be in the startup or the second round of funding. They would typically have office space in the front, would be a regional distribution for products, typically more expensive products. This would be a more expensive warehouse product. And so you probably would not see a lot of bulk distribution in these types of buildings. It tends to be a little bit more expensive product, or it tends to be a little bit more R&D or technology-based product. And so tend to see a little bit more office with these than you would see with a typical bulk distribution warehouse. So a bit of it's kind of a hybrid product, is I think what we describe this as. And so if, John, you might roll me back a couple pictures. We'll just get it. So this looks at the buildings from the southeast corner. You get a kind of a sense of what the building looks like. It has an office front that's sort of at a pedestrian scale that wraps around the front, eyebrows with shade canopies. And then as you go down the building, you sort of get away from the office area. As we look to the left here, then you have sort of a higher portion of the building where we're integrating some high skylights there to let some natural light into the space. And then we repeat an office element in the middle of the building, and then we repeat another office element at the end of the building. And that allows a building like this to break down to as many as 4 tenants. Typically, I don't see these buildings break down to 4 tenants. Usually we'll see sort of an average larger tenant who takes the first significant space, and then we lease up the remainder based on what's available there. And so you kind of a higher landscape standard for these types of buildings. If you'll roll me forward one, we'll just take another look at this building. This is just a oblique, and I like this drawing for sharing the buildings because it kind of gives you a sense of what the loading area, how it relates to the rest of the building. So here we can see the office in the foreground, and then we can see the shared loading facilities for these buildings that are in the back. And if you roll forward one more, that'll take us back to our site plan. And you can see that the way we've oriented these buildings between landscaping, screen walls, and the existing stand of trees that's in the native area there. Not a lot of view corridors down into the loading area between the 2 buildings. And so overall, this is a nice utilization of about 10 of the 100 acres that we own, about 70 usable. This would leave the lands for us that are north of this, which we call phase 2 at this point. There would be a continuation in phase 2 of Carson Crossing Boulevard, which has been planned, I think, since the Latrobe widening. There's always been a plan for Carson Crossing to continue all the way forward and create another entrance to the business park that would occur roughly adjacent, just a little bit south of where the entrance to the sewer treatment facility is. And so as we finish the phase 1 buildings that we look at here, we then move on to produce the rest of that road at our expense. That's not a publicly funded project, and this would be a private road to the public standard. The county would reserve a right to take the road in if they chose to, but they would have no obligation to do so. So that is the project I came to introduce. If you roll forward just a couple of just simple elevations so you can get a sense of the front and the back of the building. You can I've showed you some obliques there. The back you can see has loading along the back wall. And then the ends of the building really don't have significant access other than the offices wrap the end of the building, and we'll have exits, and occasionally you might have a ramp for a side loading, but almost always these are straight wall with the pedestrian exits. If you roll back to that plan, I want to introduce sort of the rest of what we're doing, and perhaps I can steal one of those little black microphones and wander up to the screen and do a little bit of pointing.
Can be big enough for you?
Yeah, I think that's great. I just want to kind of walk up here and give a sense of where we're headed from here. Most of you will recognize this as the Tractor Supply building, which was built last year. And we have been planning to put some service uses into the business park that would hopefully cut off some trips and provide some opportunities for folks in the business park and in the adjacent communities to be able to walk to services. And I think if you can see from what we've produced here that's been in the community for quite some time. And I think you can see here, we've got we're calling it a paseo. Essentially, it's an 11-foot wide multi-use sidewalk that connects Golden Foothills sort of going north through the project. And this is an existing water course here that actually came through what is the southern portion of the business park. And the collected water that's from the business park that comes out as storm drainage still makes its way to this point. And this land, all of this area that we see here is part of the lands that we eased into the conservation area. And I'm just trying to give you guys a sense of where we're going here. So basically, this set of sidewalk and road exists. the ongoing portion of this would emulate this to a great degree, although increasingly the jurisdictions are asking us not to make these articulations in the pathways because it's harder for bicycles and pedestrians to interact safely where some of these articulations occur. So you can see here we've straightened it out a little bit, and I think as we go on here, we would straighten it even a little bit more to be able to make those interactions a little bit safer. So one thing I wanted to cover is as you come out of Heritage here, there is a bike path that's already established here that dead ends at Golden Foothill. And then we have the Class 1 that was part of the Valley View specific plan that was produced when they reached the threshold of total number of units to be able to do that. And we're trying to connect as best we can some of these pieces together, although we are somewhat limited by the water course that is already been eased over to the conservation area manager. And so here we have the ability to get out to Class 2 bike lanes on Golden Foothills that could be striped in. There's plenty of width there to do so. Here we're bringing this multi-use trail into Golden Foothill, and here we're picking up that same multi-use trail and bringing it all the way up and over to here where you can cross over and get onto the Class 1 bike path. And then this pathway here will actually continue on up through the remainder of our project and will intersect Carson Crossing as it comes around heading for Latrobe. And the purpose of this is to essentially create a way to migrate through the project, but not have to migrate along Latrobe Road, which is not really very conducive to pedestrian or bicycle traffic along the road itself. And because the Class 1 already exists on the other side of Latrobe Road, we've really focused our connectivity elements here. I want to talk a little bit about these retail pads. Today we just brought in plans for 2 of the 3 buildings there. And these would be kind of your traditional shops style buildings with about 60 feet of depth, targeting service uses, food and coffee and other services that would be available in this part of the community that would hopefully cut off some trips to back to the freeway during peak and non-peak hours, and also give the employees of the business park the opportunity to grab some quicker food options that most of them don't have a long enough lunch hour to do a big lunch in town center. And so create some opportunities for that sort of service, but also create some destinations for the housing developments that are around here as well. We have a lot of folks that come in and use the road here looking for a place to walk. And so if you kind of look at where we're going here, the idea is to create the ability to circumnavigate the inside of this project. And this road will actually head over towards the creek. So we have another water course that's farther up in the project that this road would essentially parallel as it heads back to Latrobe Road. And so trying to create a continuation of what already occurs, which is people interacting with this piece of real estate and being able to get close to, but not up into the creek, which is a protected area as we get up along the edge here. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to kind of walk along on this area, but this is just gorgeous. We planted, I don't know, about 500 oak trees all along this area, and then along the water courses up there about 15 years ago. And a lot of those trees are getting pretty significant in size. Now, when you sound 500 sounds like a lot, but the uptake of the expected survival rate of those trees is between 2 and 5%. And so we've had actually pretty decent survival on those trees. And so it's beginning to look very nice. So in any event, these 3 buildings, well, these first 2 buildings here went in today. We're still trying to figure out exactly what this one wants to look like, but we'll come back at another meeting when the elevations and perspective drawings and marketing drawings are all in place, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I felt like it was nice to sort of see what this all wants to be sort of in relationship one to the other. Perhaps that's a good place to stop and see if anybody has any questions.
So,
Scott, while you're up there,
Yes, sir.
we had our conversation 10 days ago. You had mentioned that, again, for the benefit of everyone else in the room and on the Zoom
Sure.
call, your organization has the ability to build by right. Correct?
That's correct. These are by right
Can you
buildings.
explain what by right is? 'Cause a lot of people don't understand. They say, well, how come we don't have to go through a full environmental? Are there zoning issues? So if you could explain what build by
Sure,
right means
sure.
for both both sections that the future retail pads and this as well.
Okay, sure. We talk about by right development, we're talking about uses that are available for a project that has already gone through an existing environmental process. And then those uses that are being proposed to be constructed on the site meet the zoning requirement for the type of building as well as the elements of the building. And the zoning code establishes a table of uses. And so when a building is essentially on a site that's been previously studied, when the services are readily available to the site, and when the building comports with the established standards for the site, then that development, assuming it meets all of those tests, is considered by right development. And so I'm certainly not a land use attorney, and hopefully I'm doing justice to what a land use attorney might professorially share here, but in the layman's language of a guy who builds office parks, industrial parks, I think that gets us close to it. And so these buildings meet those standards as to how they sit on the site. The El Dorado Hills Business Park has its own architectural review standards and architectural review committee, and that process has existed for 30 plus years. The EIR that was done for the project has been in place for 30 plus years. The zoning that was in place here was modified in 2015 to open up some additional uses for the community. And so these two buildings would have been available as by right development opportunities under the prior 2015. In the 2015, additional uses were added, and with the intention of being able to attract some of these types of uses to the business park and to the southern portion of the community. And so some of the service uses that are contemplated here, which includes drive-around retail in 2 locations, were added to the table of available uses in a 2015 revisit of the zoning. So I don't know if I've done that justice or if I answered your question completely. How about other questions?
I have actually several.
Go right ahead. I'll do my best.
Okay. Matter of disclosure. I live in Heritage.
Okay.
As you several remember here at the here in the room today.
Sure.
One of our big concerns is obviously the extension of Carson Crossing that would eventually perhaps be an issue with regard to the Carson Crossing portion, which is basically a neighborhood connector as defined by the Pacific Plan, the Carson Creek Pacific Plan. And so one thing would we like to do, being residents of Heritage, certainly the residents of Four Seasons also that are impacted by the circular nature of Carson Crossing, to sit down with you and obviously the planning staff and the transportation staff of the county to make sure we can talk about and worry about in advance any mitigating issues that may occur, especially as we get into phase 2 and some of those plans that we have seen. But that's not today's topic, but I would really encourage you to
Always
to
happy
meet
to
with us
participate in the
to talk
conversation.
further about that. Yeah.
But I will say that this whole infrastructure for roads has been contemplated.
No, we understand that.
For quite some time, and long before Heritage, honestly.
Well, I understand that, but the Carson Creek Pacific Plan, which is designed specifically for a subclass, not a subclass, for a classification of citizens, seniors, basically. Homes were designed for that purpose. Carson Crossing is basically a major neighborhood connector. And that anything that might go from Latrobe all the way down to Golden Foothills and then suddenly empty into Carson Crossing south is obviously an impact on our community, and we need to talk about that. I'm not arguing the issue.
Sure,
We need to,
always
we're
happy
talking
to-
about
yeah,
how we
always happy
mitigate the
to
issues
talk-
in advance.
Talk about it. To be clear, we're not proposing that Carson Crossing is a high-speed piece of roadway. We're talking about 2 lanes with some turning lanes here.
Well, I think
Relatively low speed.
Yeah, well, Scott, I think what you're talking about today, I think is consistent with everybody's thinking. I think people expected to see those kinds of office buildings, and that's always been very consistent with the population that believe that that kind of campus-like environment is appropriate. We are also very concerned, obviously, about the Carson Creek Nature Preserve and the fact that you guys have already done such good work in that regard. You're going to be obviously a good neighbor to us in terms of protecting that piece of it. But I'm just,
No,
I'm starting the discussion
absolutely
just so
happy
we
to
can.
talk. And of course, yeah, you see a road on a drawing here, and it's easy to sort of assume the worst. But I think when we talk, you're going to.
Well, no, we need to mitigate.
You'll
Phase
appreciate.
2 is really the big concern, and
Right.
the distribution issues and the trucking issues that might come out of that. But that's not tonight's meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Let me go back to this. These 3 retail pads you have. Now, you say that have they changed since the drawings you put out during the pre-application that I guess was withdrawn?
Well,
because 2 of them had service entrance, basically.
Drive-arounds.
Thank
Drive-around
you, huh?
retail. Yeah, and these ones, as I show them here, have conceptual drive-around retail here as well.
Okay. All right. And is there a traffic study that's going to be part of this?
There'll be a traffic analysis that will be part of the application process, yes.
Okay, good. All right. That's all right now. But, we definitely want to follow back up with you, Scott, on the phase 2. Absolutely.
You know, one thing that I might mention too, since we brought this up, is that one of the purposes of making this connection here is to take pressure off of this intersection here, right? So this intersection has sort of a natural constraint, which is the adjacency of Robert J. Matthews Parkway and Latrobe Road, which is, you know, it's tight, right? The bottom line is R.J. Matthews is essentially dumping into this road, already affecting sort of the stacking distance on that road. And that's one of the reasons why the entrance to this piece of real estate was pushed back. We had actually originally designed to be at the same station point as our Robert J. Matthews, and as we worked with Department of Transportation and planning staff, it was concluded that pushing farther away would allow more relaxed movements out of this project that allowed R.J. Matthews to finish its terminating movements and allow this traffic to work its way into that program. But where I was going on this here is that this piece of road also serves to take pressure off of that intersection by giving the opportunity for some of the traffic that's coming around this way to elect to come around and hit Latrobe Road at a signalized intersection. It also allows the Heritage traffic. I know you're concerned about traffic potentially coming into Heritage, but it also allows the Heritage traffic to make a movement up, come around, and avoid the R.J. Matthews, Latrobe, Golden Foothill intersection there. So some good and some bad in every opportunity.
So I see, John Resler, your hand is up. Are you ready to chat?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what's the estimate on the truck traffic for your two buildings, 113? How many trucks a day have they estimated will come into those two warehouses?
We could certainly ask Fair and Pierce to give you a range of possible arrivals and departures, but it's entirely dependent on the use. I have buildings of this nature that have one or two truck movements a week, and I have uses along the size of these that might have, 2 or 3 turns per day per door. So it's a pretty wide range, and I'm sorry I'm not evading your question. We can sit down and talk about this with Fair and Pierce and look at what the total range, but this is the intended and contemplated use for land in the business park is for these types of employment generating uses to be produced. And there is a certain amount of traffic that's contemplated for these uses. The TC laws that have and standards that have been established are wrapped around the business park continuing to fill in. And I've participated in the El Dorado Hills Economic Community Foundation for 15 years, trying to sort of identify and attract businesses and jobs to the community. And so I'm not here to tell you that there aren't going to be trips associated with these buildings. I'm saying that the trips have been anticipated for decades, and that the regional traffic planning and the traffic infrastructure management program that's in place, as well as the capital plan, are contemplating the uses that are going to occur in the business park as it builds out. And so I don't know how to specifically answer your question in this moment.
John, I think that obviously you and I and others in the El Dorado Hills South Coalition are probably more concerned about phase 2 and the estimated 4,000 additional vehicle activities or travel times that are now estimated by virtue of what you've already filed. So I think that we can sit down and more constructively go through those numbers and meet with Rafael Martinez and obviously with Karen and her staff. Just we'll find out what the real impact really is.
Happy to do so.
Well, when you look at just one building alone that has 16 loading docks, you realize that you're going to have a good number of trucks coming and going, taking, delivering, not even taking into consideration the other building on the other side. There's going to be a lot of truck traffic coming in and out of that. And I think that has to be part of whatever study is done, the EIR or whatever on this particular.
That EIR has long been completed, and the use that we're proposing to introduce here is contemplated and has already been studied. That's the concept of by right development.
For a building this size, for 2 buildings that size, they contemplated this already?
The build out of the business park for these types of approved uses has long been contemplated and is part of the study that established the business park and has been part of the traffic infrastructure management and capital programs to build roads in the community. And so the simple fact is that every time we try to produce something in the community, that's not a fresh bite at the apple to start again and say, should we or shouldn't we? These lands have been designated for these uses for decades, and these lands have been owned by owners who have invested significant dollars to produce buildings that are consistent with the zoning and consistent with the community planning standard. And so I understand that you don't want a single additional trip in the community, but this is exactly what the plan anticipates, and this use is fulfilling the plan for the community.
I'm just going to say that I don't agree with you that they ever anticipated buildings of this size with this number of loading docks in the past. I think this is something that's new and something that has to be taken into consideration when you're putting all of these trucks, and I don't know what size the trucks are going to be, on Golden Foothills and possibly on Carson Crossing and on Latrobe.
If I can jump in.
To be very honest with you, I doubt if they ever contemplated buildings this size.
John, if I can jump in real quick, Scott's describing it. A lot of these buildings haven't been built that do these type of functions, but it was considered in the original plan. In the late 80s and early 90s, I was leasing 150,000 square foot buildings, and we looked here in the business park in Dorado Hills. It didn't pencil out for us, but those are uses that were considered when the original plan was. Just because they haven't been adopted in that fashion yet, it was a considered use back then. But I think if, as a group, I know Bob and John and just some other community residents that are close there with Heritage and Four Seasons, if we want to get a group of questions together, and we should submit it to and have a discussion with Raphael, and then get some information or questions over for Scott. And you can
Happy to participate. John, I don't want to disagree with you, but you are approaching these buildings as if these are gigantic industrial distribution buildings, but these simply are not. These are buildings that load on one side. They're each of them significantly less than 100,000 feet. And there are a variety of other buildings in the business park which are in this size range that have been built over time. So I don't want to disagree with you, but I think you need to go back and look at the size of these buildings and contrast them to the existing buildings in the community, and you're going to see that this is not unusual. And these are not big buildings. They're not cross-dock facilities. These are the types of buildings that tend to attract smaller, average-sized users that tend to have decent jobs associated with them. And this is going to be a pretty expensive product. It's definitely not going to be a place where bulk distributors are going to propose to move all sorts of product. I understand what you're concerned about, but I think needs to be an opportunity for us to sit down and compare these to the other buildings in the business park, or compare them to general purpose office industrial buildings regionally here. And I think you're going to see that these are relatively diminutive buildings in the context of business park properties.
But, I think part of the problem is the way it's actually shown on your map, which shows them as being very big, significant sized buildings. And I think what we would have to look at is the actual scale of these buildings, and then compare them to the other buildings that are in the business park, and then talk about, how these buildings are going to be used, how they're going to be serviced, who's going to be coming in, who's going to be coming out, so we can determine traffic that would be coming in on Golden Foothill, and most importantly, coming in on Carson Crossing.
So let's plan on having, like we said, let's break it into a smaller group, and obviously we're not going to answer it tonight.
All right, and I agree with that. Yes, I think the way that they're presented here on this map makes them look like extremely big buildings. By the way, I think you can make them a little nicer looking, but that's beside the point. We have to look at them more in scale of what they actually are. Okay. Thank you.
If we can get together and we'll have those discussions as a group, and then we'll just offer some questions to transportation, and then we'll share them with Scott so he can take a peek at them as well. If there's any more information we can get from that, I think Scott's pretty engaged with us. So, but thanks for pointing those out, John.
In fairness too, Scott, you came highly recommended by people that I highly respect.
Well, thank you.
And then they say that they're willing to work with residents, and we're going to count on you to do that with us.
I'm pretty forthcoming, and I'm pretty available, but I think we can't lose sight of what the purpose of these lands are and what their purpose in the community plan is. And so we have to take them where they lie in the current, where all of these lands lie in the current plan. And just like so many folks who tonight have said that they've owned their houses since whenever, we've owned this land for approximately 20 years,
think you
getting
also
ready
have
to
to understand,
getting
too.
ready to produce assets just like this when the community and the marketplace that serves the community was ready to receive these buildings. And millions and millions of dollars have been spent in preparation for that. Conservation easements, mass grading, establishment of infrastructure. So when we work in a community in the same way that as homeowners, you have expectations of what's going to occur around your home, we have expectations of what's going to be legally permitted to occur on the properties as well. And we make significant investment in the property as well as significant participation in the community to be ready to produce that asset when the market's ready for it, and to produce the jobs and the infrastructure and the connectivity and the other things that come with that. And so all I would say is summer rules in golf. We got to play the ball where it lies. This is not a question of are we or aren't we going to zone for a business park here. We're zoned for a business park here. These are uses that are proposed in the established doctrines of the community to be built in this, and we're simply executing that business strategy.
To your credit, I agree with that concept. But we also have to understand, too, that we have 3 specific plans that are all buttressed against here. The business park, the Carson Creek Pacific Plan, and the Valley View Pacific Plan.
Right.
Each one of them designed for a particular purpose. If there's a conflict in the concept associated with any one of those 3 plans, then that's where we have to mitigate.
But really, as those plans are produced and developed, the purpose of that planning exercise is actually to address that integration project by project, specific plan by specific plan as we go. So if you look in order,
And that's what we're doing.
the business park, Valley View, Heritage, they came in that order.
Yeah, but and I'm going to jump in again. I think no one really anticipated the building of Heritage right across from this. And also Heritage that's been expanded to 3 different divisions. So we're talking about things that weren't anticipated. And you used the term work with. And I think that's what people are expecting, that you will work with the people who live adjacent to this and who have to travel these roads, that they will work with you to make sure that this is a viable plan. Okay? Thank you.
I understand your point, and thank you for your time.
Okay, so look, we got hands up in the room, so, oh my gosh, who's, well, let's hit Maria, she's got one right here. We'll just go like this, boom, 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 okay? And we're getting up on our time here, so.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment that when I heard you were planning, if I understand, those are going to be 3 retail pads right next to Tractor Supply. I mean, that whole area strikes me as extremely sterile. I mean, it is without any services. You break down and you're lucky if someone's going to come and get you. So I think it's really exciting that something is going to happen. I don't know that part of town, but there's also absolutely no reason to go to that part. And so that's just my comment.
Maria, you got it on? Good deal.
What's the percentage of the office space in comparison to the warehouse space in each building? Is it about 30% office space or?
It depends on the use of that comes to us. So these are for lease buildings. So the typical use would be between 5 and 15% of the building, just based on our historic utilizations. I've seen these types of buildings build out to 30%. it really is limited by the parking. And so the way that the code addresses this issue is that we look first at the building, and there's a certain amount of parking spaces that are attributable to the building. And then we look to the office space that would be produced in the building. And so we can only produce so much office space based on how many parking spaces we have available. And so there's not a perfectly clear answer to your question at this time, but 10 to 30% is kind of my gut as to what we would see as the
So they're
amount
just
of office
empty,
build out.
and then they get built out as as customers come in and decide they want to utilize the space. Is
That's
that right?
correct. So essentially, we
Okay.
offer them to the marketplace. Our marketing team is out there trying to identify users who want to be in this general area. We compete against other buildings that are in the general area. And then if we are able to accommodate their office requirement, and if we see the production of the offices that they would like to have as financially feasible and a reasonable investment, then we would build into the price of a lease for them the cost of producing some amount of office space, and that 10 to 30% build out on a space-by-space basis is a pretty good guess. That doesn't mean that other portions of the space might not have dropped ceilings or heating and cooling associated with them, but the portion that would be attributable to office occupancy in that approximate range across an average. Some may more, some less.
And these are just standard warehouses. They're not being geared up to be like data center build outs where you would have new fiber cabling or anything like that brought in, or additional power structure or anything.
So we're not proposing to build a data center buildings. These are traditional sort of employment focused buildings. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity when we finish the project for there to be data components associated with the buildings. But these are not being built in the anticipation for as being a data center, and we're not establishing infrastructure for a data center.
You have a microphone back there or close by? Apologize, we left one up here unattended.
Hi, my name is Rick Burgart. I live in Heritage, about a third of a mile from those buildings. So obviously I have a concern. This layout doesn't concern me too much. Those buildings, I came from the grocery business, that's like a Safeway store. So if you want to look at a comparison, 78,000, actually that's a small Safeway store. So it's not as big as, I believe it was John that had a concern about the building. What I am concerned about is the continuation of Carson Crossing, across Golden Foothill into the phase 2 development and the increased traffic, major traffic from what I've seen, and the emissions. That I'm very concerned about. So hopefully there'll be some open discussions there. I realize your plan was put together. Carson Crossing was in 96, right, Bob? For Heritage, it came on later, but to simply say, you know, you've got 1,000, well, in this case, 1,069 homes and another 409 homes going in, almost 1,500 homes, and to say that you're not going to be empathetic to those folks is.
I'm not saying that I'm empathetic. I'm just saying that we have to look at what the purpose of the business park lands are.
You've said that about 4 times.
Yeah. The other
100%.
question I think we got to look at is how much of the business park traffic that you're concerned about is currently going through Heritage?
Right now?
Yeah. I mean, there's a significant amount of business park lands there. Are you seeing a significant problem associated with business park traffic creating unreasonable conditions in Heritage based on the existing build out of the business park?
As our building was being built, yes, I had a lot of traffic going down my street, but that's concluded. So it's not too bad. But again, I'm more concerned about the phase 2, not this. My question is on the 3 parcels, can you identify the retailer or type of business? I'm assuming the one might be a coffee shop in the corner because that's what Starbucks likes to do. I don't know if you can say that.
I'm not able to identify anybody, but I will say that these are speculatively built buildings. And so for them, you know, there are a few people that we're in conversation with. In all cases, we're under confidentiality agreements. And you can see why they would demand that of us. But I think they're the types of community, and it always starts in these types of service centers with the food, right? Basically, the food drives the rest of the center. And based on who arrives for food, the other uses cuddle in next to the food uses that are associated.
That's an individual building. It wouldn't be multiple retailers or just the one in the center, the second one.
No, each of these is being built for multiple potential
Okay.
retailers. You know, a typical food retailer would be between 4,000 and 1,500 feet. And so conceptually, these buildings will be 5,000 feet are the rough dimensions of the buildings. Or 60 feet deep. Most of these buildings would have multiple divisions for individual tenants. It's not to say that someone might not show up and want to do a 6,000-foot use, but the typical beginning uses we would see here are between 1,500 and 3,000. So those initial food uses that drive the rest of it would, I think, the cases that I'm currently seeing take less than the full building. I think that gets directly to your question.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions in the room? Thank you for being in town.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to
Appreciate the
come.
opportunity.
I'll come back as many times as we want to talk.
Well, and we know it's a journey for you, so Zoom's always an option.
It was really a journey yesterday because I live in Bend. I was headed to the airport. There was a terrible collision in front of me on the way to the airport. I literally sat stuck between two off-ramps until my flight time ended. So yesterday at 3:30, I wheeled my car around and headed south on 97 and got here at 11 o'clock last night. So it was a longer commute than normal to come visit with everybody.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you. Are you done with it, or are you good? Okay, so I'm going to stop the share on this.
Actually, if I might just say one thing.
Sure.
I just want to thank Karen Gardner for being so gracious and responding to a couple of questions that was submitted through George Turnbow, and for us, and for the referrals to your staff members. And again, we don't want to see the kind of acrimony we saw with Project Frontier again. I think that the spirit of cooperation has obviously been shown, and we greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much, Karen.
So in the end, I didn't acknowledge Karen when she came in, but we were in the throes of getting things going. So thank you we appreciate when you show up. We'll probably be extending you an invitation to see if there's some things we can talk about later. But we always appreciate when county staff is available to us. It's invaluable for us when we discuss projects. So thank you for being here today and spending a late night with us at that. So we had some other things on the agenda. We're just going to wrap it up and say that we produced comments we submitted for TAC meetings for the Montano mixed use project. We did TAC meeting comments for Costco. Where are my notes? So we don't have to go through them all the screens. But Roger did most of the work on the Montano comments that we submitted for the TAC meeting. A lot of us did some for the Costco, but it's primarily focused on what the changes have been proposed for the mixed use on the EDH 52 side of that project. And then George Steed did work on the Latrobe Road self-storage. Did I never get it right when I said it. But thank you for our volunteers for doing that work. And it's, these are comments that we typically just send in for planning staff and for the applicants to look at. And as projects evolve, we'll provide more comments and do a little more review. So our next meeting, if I could remember, is, I want to say September 20th. It is September 20th. It's back here in this room at 6:30 p.m. Make sure I didn't miss, the only other thing I was going to say is the Supervisor Heidel shared with us at Community Council meeting on Monday that the Central Elderwood Hills specific plan, that there's some proposed times that might be coming back to the Board of Supervisors. It'd be, I think we said mid-August, October, future times, October, possibly in November, possibly in December. One of those meetings would likely happen, or I believe we're efforting to have that happen here in El Dorado Hills. More as that becomes available. When we know, you'll know. And so with that, I think if there's nothing else to go back on, then let's wrap it up. Thank you for spending a long evening with us. And we look forward to seeing everybody in September. and enjoy Labor Day.